Thank you. There's some various other jobs I've done over the years. Iron Man, War Machine. There's some X-Men, some Wolverine. Here's a cover, a Tigra cover. She's one of the Avengers. There she is, riding a Razorback. Some more Tigra. The U.S. Agent, that's another cover. And you can see the overlays where we would put the logos on. This was my big book for Marvel when I started with Spider-Woman. They created Spider-Woman to retain the Spider-Woman copyright. They didn't want any other company coming and taking their Spider-Man idea and using it for anyone else, so they did a Spider everything. They even did a Spider Pig. His name is Peter Porker, the Spectacular Spider-Ham. When you draw a picture, you use construction. Construction is, you'll see a good artist drawing really fast, and he'll take his pencil and he'll sketch really quick. And what this is I'm figuring out proportion and line of action as I draw in a sketch. And then when you want to finish the drawing, you draw it darker. And as you go through, then you erase the lines you don't want. And that's how you come up with a finished drawing. 1977 and 78 happened, and that was the year Star Wars came out. So when I was in 3rd grade, I was drawing Star Wars all the time. And there was a rock and roll band that I liked too called Kiss, because they would paint their faces up. And also the Superman movie with Christopher Reeve came out around the same time. So for a period in school, I was just drawing Star Wars and Superman and Kiss. And Dave was talking about that seminar. When I came here and I brought the old art I did when I was a kid, it was to show kids that when I was 7, I drew just like you. I drew exactly like you did. It was the fact that I didn't stop drawing. I kept drawing 7, 8 years old, 9, 10, and by the time I was 10, I could draw so much better than when I was 7. And by the time I was 12, I could draw even that much better. And it just kept going. And I was able to show the progression. One thing I knew was that I really needed to fall back on something if the art didn't work. And I would say to be a good artist, I did pretty good when I was in school. I read a lot. I did pretty well. And to be a great artist, you need to be well-rounded, especially in science. Math is a foundation of art. Math is a foundation of everything. But science and literature, different stories. I also became a writer as I went along and kept working. I didn't come up with it. I did not come up with that, because if I came up with that, I would have showed up here in a helicopter. Who found me? Nobody found me. I went to New York City when I was 17 years old. It was a school in Dover, New Jersey, of all places, called the Joe Kubert School. And Joe Kubert is a really famous comic book artist, but he teamed up with an animator from Disney named Milt Neal. He worked on the second tier of movies, which was Sleeping Beauty, Pinocchio, Lady and the Tramp, all the movies that came out in the 50s for Disney he worked for. Just kept going into New York City all the time. Even though the school was in Jersey, I would just hop on the train. I would go into the city, and I would make my way into comic companies. Made them discover me. I knew that I could draw, and I just went up there, and I bothered them so much that they had to give me a job.
If you were to be one character off Marvel, who would it be?
Well, people ask me that question all the time, and so I guess I always liked Spider-Man, but the character that got me drawing really was Batman.
Did you get inspiration?
Well, inspiration for me comes from a lot of things in life. Inspiration used to come from my dog when my dog was around. Inspiration comes from girls sometimes. Inspiration comes from music or movies. A lot of different things can inspire a person.
Do you still draw Superman?
Well, I've worked for DC Comics. I've done a couple jobs for DC Comics. That's another company. Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman are DC Comics. Marvel Comics is Spider-Man, the Hulk, and the X-Men, and Captain America. It's two separate companies with separate characters, and I have done work for DC, and I've drawn Superman before, but my main source of work comes from Marvel. So mostly I draw Spider-Man and Iron Man and the Incredible Hulk and the Avengers.
And get someone to see your artwork. What's the best way to go about doing that?
Well, with the internet, I would recommend definitely having pages on Deviant, any place where you can have a portfolio up. I would do that. Have a website with your art, and have a portfolio or a website that you could just put the link on your email that they could just click on and go and see your artwork. You need 3 things to make it as an artist in any art-driven business, whether you're in children's book publishing or you're a toy designer or you work for a video game company. You have to make your deadlines. You have to be personable, people have to like you, and you have to be talented. You don't need all 3 of those. You only need 2 of those 3. But you need to have 2. You can't just have 1. And if you have all 3, then holy smoke. Really, you have to be as forceful through emails, and not in an annoying way, but you have to try to figure out a way to get them to look at your work.
On copyright, you gotta keep someone stealing her artwork, sign it.
Well, you sign a name. What I used to do, here's a good trick. When I was a kid, and people know this, I would create a character. I would put it in an envelope and I would seal it and I would put a stamp on it. Return address to me, and I would mail it through the mail to myself. When it came to me in the mail, I wouldn't open it. It's got a federal stamp and a date on it that tells anybody years from now that on that date, I drew that character. As long as it stays sealed in that envelope, yeah, I know. In a court of law, blah, blah, blah. You didn't pay a lawyer. There's all kinds of other laws. But it's the cheapest proof that you created something on a certain date and it has a federal stamp on it, and as long as it's sealed, it's in a sealed envelope.
So, do you know how old Peter Parker is?
What's that?
Do you know how old Peter Parker is?
How old is Peter Parker? He was created in 1963.
Like, how old is he?
I don't know. It depends on what storyline you're reading, Dave. Please, no more nerd questions like Dave's questions. The problem with these characters, this is a problem with these characters. Superman was created in 1938. Spider-Man was created in 1962 or 63. You have a reader, say this gentleman here started reading Spider-Man back in 1970, and he's been reading it this whole time. As he's growing and he's reading these stories, he's wishing inside, Spider-Man should be growing with me. How come Spider-Man is still a teenager? And now I'm 35. But it's actually not you, sir, it's me. They sometimes will just go back to the drawing board, get rid of their whole numbering system on comics, and just start from a new number 1 and redo it. And sometimes the older fans, the tried and true fans that have been around for a while, they'll get upset and say, well, why'd you do that? I've been reading it this whole time. But that's the reason why they do it. They have to make it relevant again for the next group of fans. Every 10 years, there's a new 10-year-old on the planet that is just discovering Spider-Man. So I'm not trying to discourage anybody, because if you work hard at it, you can do it. And if you have talent and ability, you'll be able to do it. If you are talented and you meet an artist, try to get to know him, I guess. The reality is, to be a good artist, you have to be really well read, and you need to know you need to know science, and you need to know math.
You went to the library a lot.
I did. I loved the library when I was a kid. I mean, nowadays, some people laugh, what do you need a library for? Everything's on your phone. But if I could have brought all my World Book encyclopedias with me everywhere I went, I would have.
Do you know what anime or manga is?
Yeah, of course I do. Japanese, for some reason, feel that the eyes are the windows to the soul, so they draw really big eyes. You can see here that when I draw something, I don't just kind of go in and just start drawing the detail. I'm drawing Batman right now, kind of hunched over on a fire escape, and I'm just doing what I call construction. I'm figuring out proportion, how big he is, doing an outline, setting up my drawing.